Besides looking at what the players are wearing, one great way to tell what era of football game you're watching is by the offensive formations and how the defensive formations react to it. Well, Timothy P. Brown of Football Archaeology takes us back into the 1950s to tell us about the formations of 1955. Tim's up in just a moment to tell us all about it.
This is the Pigskin Daily History Dispatch, a podcast that covers the anniversaries of American football events throughout history. Your host, Darren Hayes, is podcasting from America's North Shore to bring you the memories of the gridiron, one day at a time.
Hello, my football friends. This is Darren Hayes of PigskinDispatch.com. Welcome once again to the Pig Pen, your portal to positive football history. And welcome to another Tuesday where we get to talk with Timothy P. Brown of FootballArchaeology.com fame. And Tim, welcome back to the Pig Pen.
Darren, looking forward to chatting. I'm hoping that this podcast is highly informative.
I think it's going to be highly informative, and I think we ought to party like it's 1955. Was that the song by Prince? Wasn't it something like that?
Yeah. I'm not sure. Well, okay, whatever.
Okay.
It wouldn't be the year I'd pick, but
Okay.
you do you.
Well, you did pick this year because you wrote a story on it, and
Yeah,
the
that's
story is titled Offensive Formations in 1955.
Yeah.
What can you tell us about this?
Well, so first of all, so when I published this story, I it comes about because I recently bought a little publication called Everybody's Football. It was a giveaway, an advertising premium from the Massachusetts Mutual Life Insurance Company. And so I was just working off of that. And I remembered, when I was paging through it, that I'd seen it copyrighted in 1947, but I didn't pay attention to that. And then after I wrote the first two stories in this sequence, then I went back and I looked at, I said, I got to figure out who wrote this thing, because there really doesn't have a lot of author information, and who illustrated it, because it's got all these really cool. I mean, if you're into commercial art and period commercial art, it's got some great imagery in it. And I think a lot of the people who are reading it for the visuals, for what I have to say. But anyways,
So is it like the Playboy for the football fan is what you're saying?
That's right.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, it's Playboy. It might even be Penthouse for the
Oh, okay.
yeah,
All right.
for the graphic artist among football fans. This one time in college. Anyways, let's not go there. So the story. So anyways, then like the third story in the sequence, I basically went back and figured out who these people were who wrote the thing. And my point in giving that background is that it was originally published in 1947 and then republished in 55. And my sense is that they didn't make a lot of changes in the 1955 version. And I say that because even what, like the first two stories I wrote, I'm kind of saying, well, this feels more like the 1940s stuff than the 1950s, even though I titled it about 1955. And so sure enough, they're published by a guy who was the line coach at Georgetown University, then a sports writer in Washington, and then the illustrator is a commercial artist who probably is most famous for creating the Notre Dame leprechaun. That's the surprise in story number 3.
Oh, okay.
So anyway, but so this first one just says, okay, when they laid out the offenses that were used in 55, they basically identified the single wing, the Notre Dame box or shift, the double wing, then the modern T, the split T, and the wing T. And so the reason I had said, well, this feels more like 40s and 50s is because they kind of gave short thrift to the split T and the wing T, which by 1955 were a bigger deal than, that you would have thought that they'd get more coverage. Anyways, but so the cool thing, just from a pure football standpoint, in looking at those six offenses, is that you had the original, uh, the original traditional T, um, where it's basically the same positioning as the modern T, but the quarterback was offset from center, and he got the snap, and then he pitched it to, or handed it off to one of his teammates. But the single wing, the Notre Dame box, and the double wing all were direct snap offenses. So we went from the original offense where you're snapping to the quarterback, who then had to pitch it, or at least hand it off or pitch it to somebody else. But then in 1912, the rules changed, so you didn't, or 1910, the rules changed, so you didn't have to do that anymore, right? We got rid of the checkerboard field and those associated rules. So now with the direct snap, those three are all direct snap offenses, and basically you're snapping the ball directly to your dominant back. In the wing T, or in the single wing, it's Carlisle with Jim Thorpe, at the tailback. Notre Dame is a little bit more mixed up because they kind of balanced it's kind of it helped you complement your different players. But like the double wing, that was like Ernie Nevers, at Stanford, getting playing fullback in the double wing. So you had these you got the ball right to your dominant player. And then the next three, starting in 1940, then you get the T, the Shaughnessy and Hallis and those guys. And then in 41 you had Don Farrow at Missouri with the split T, and then you had the boys from Delaware. Now I'm blanking on his name, but anyways, with the wing T, that was more like late 40s, early 50s. But there you got a quarterback under center, and the the and the offenses start spreading out a bit. They become a little more passing oriented, passing friendly. You got men in motion, you got wings, you got split ends. So it's just one of those things where it's just kind of it's interesting that this was a real transition point. 47, they were still in transition from the direct snap offenses to the quarterback under center offenses. And then, but each of those had variations, right? Again, direct snap, single wing, Notre Dame, and double wing. And then the quarterback under center, you got the modern T, you got the split T, and you've got the wing T. And then obviously there's been a million different variations since then. But it's kind of a cool period look at what the offensive formations were just at a moment in time, right? Now today, but what's kind of cool now is just that we're, in a lot of ways, we've gone back to the direct snap offenses, right? Kind of starting with the shotgun, and then we get to the read option, and whatever we're doing now with the read options and RPOs and whatnot. But it's a much more passing oriented, direct snap, as opposed to a running oriented direct snap. So, it's one of these, history repeats itself or rhymes or whatever, right? But it's just it's interesting how now we're so spread out, horizontally on the football field, and it's there. If you want to spread all the receivers out, there aren't many left to be in the backfield anymore. They're out there wide.
Right.
And so then you direct snap it, and you got, either an empty backfield or you have one guy, and but that's, the old days are gone, other than when people do specialty, trickeration, specialty plays, right? And those are fun, you know. Those are fun because they bring back something old, and it surprises, defenses that aren't built to defend them.
It makes you almost kind of wonder what, innovators like Amos Alonzo Stagg and Pop Warner would think about if they see those empty backfield sets that we have now. They'd probably be, what the heck's going on here?
Yeah, so I mean, it's one of those things that like, so college football for a long time had a rule that said everybody had to be within 15 yards of the center. So like some of the split ends that we have now, you couldn't do legally.
Mm-hmm.
But they I don't even know when they put that in, but because like early on, like 1908, Idaho had a spread formation they were all across the field, and so it wasn't like people, there were here and there were people who imagined really different, radical ways of spreading the field, but for the most part, everybody kind of maintained these five guys are the interior linemen. They're going to stay real close to one another. And yeah, sometimes we'll split the end like 3 yards or something like that. So it was more like people did things it was the norm. That was just kind of the nature of the game. And it wasn't because you had to do it that way. It would kind of be like, well, now they've instituted rules, but it'd be kind of like, shifting the outfield in baseball. For a long time, everybody just kept their people in, same old spots or shifting a little bit. They didn't do the radical shift. And then all of a sudden somebody said, well, why not? So they started doing it. So there's things like that. It's the norm. The pace of play is another good example of that. The ball, somebody's down, boom, you get back, line up, boom, call the next play and go. So, now, like our pace of play, I mean, we got hurry up offenses, but they're not as hurry up used to run them, back at Michigan in early days of the 20th century. So it's just, I don't know, it's always interesting, like what do people do based on norms and tradition versus what they do but based on the rules. So it's the culture versus rules kind of arguments.
Yeah, and it's nice and so refreshing that what you do in these tidbits of yours, that you're talking about the tradition of football. You're bringing those traditions of early football back to us and reminding of us of what this game was like and what these players were facing and the strategies. And it's also interesting. It's like you said, it's a totally different game than what we are used to watching in our lifetime, and that really makes it quite interesting to know the evolution. And you do this, you do this a lot in your tidbits, and maybe you could share with the listeners where they can take in some of these.
Sure. Go to footballarchaeology.com. It's a Substack site, so either subscribe, in which case you'll get an email every time I publish a story, or bookmark it, go there whenever you want. Or I'm also on Blue Sky, so if you want to follow me there, have at it, because I publish it on Blue Sky every time as well. So kind of whatever floats your boat.
All right. Well, Tim, we really appreciate you coming on here and sharing with us today. Hope everybody enjoys the games this weekend that are up, because we're in the football season, and talk to you about it next week.
Very good. Looking forward to it.
That's all the football history we have today, folks. Join us back tomorrow for more of your football history. We invite you to check out our website, pigskindispatch.com, not only to see the daily football history, but to experience positive football with our many articles on the good people of the game, as well as our own football comic strip, Cleat Marks Comics. Pigskindispatch.com is also on social media outlets, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and don't forget the Pigskin Dispatch YouTube channel to get all of your positive football news and history. Special thanks to the talents of Mike and Gene Monroe, as well as Jason Neff, for letting us use their music during our podcast.
This podcast is part of the Sports History Network, your headquarters for the yesteryear of your favorite sport. You can learn more at sportshistorynetwork.com.